So earlier this month, Elon Musk, who's spearheading the Department of Government Efficiency, he tweeted out, CFPB RIP. What's your thoughts on a tweet like that and then his next moves?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a very coarse way of conveying your message. I like to think that Americans can be more thoughtful about the CFPB. Look, if you think for some reason there's a problem with it, tell me what the problems are with it. Tell me why you want to kill it. Tell me why returning literally millions upon millions of dollars to nearly a quarter of the people in this country is a bad thing. Tell me why making sure that consumers, everyday men and women who can't afford a lawyer to fight for them, like the big banks and the big credit card companies, why that's a bad thing. Elon Musk can't explain why that's a bad thing. It's a good thing for him and his fellow billionaires. So he comes up with a coarse soundbite like that, which, has some superficial appeal, I suspect, to some people. But when you dig into the facts and the details of what that agency has done, its elimination is a loss for Americans. It's not a gain.
Some Republicans say that there's redundancies in the agency and that consumers can instead go to the FTC or the FDIC. Do you see redundancies in the agency?
No. In fact, there's lots of consumer laws that the CFPB was designed to enforce. It's all well and good to have a consumer protection law, but those other agencies are very narrow in what they cover. And frankly, they only do really big cases. The FTC, we've worked with them. They're only going to look, for example, at an antitrust case that hits a certain percentage of people and market share. Right? They're not going to do small cases. When I was just attorney, it was the same thing. We weren't prosecuting small but important cases. We were only doing major drug distribution cases. We were only doing major gun trafficking cases. The state, we're left here now in this job, we're doing 5,000 cases a year where they're doing 100. So somebody needs to fill that gap on the federal level too, because individual states, particularly ones like Rhode Island, frankly, are too small to go after some of these big companies like Capital One and others. And so this agency filled a need. Look, you can't argue, I believe, that returning $21 billion to 195 million Americans over the course of this agency's history is a bad thing. That's a lot of money to a lot of people that they would be without otherwise. And look, from our own consumer work that we do here in Rhode Island, I know, because I write a letter to every single constituent that we help. You know from your work with consumers, Emily, that small amounts of money mean a lot to a lot of people. The $50, the $100, the $150, that's real money to people. It's principal in some instances, but it's more than principal in others.
What about the American who supports these DOGE efforts to cut federal programs, to cut the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? What do you say to that? They say, hey, I've never reached out to them. I've never gotten a dime from them. Why do I need to keep funding them with my tax dollars? Have there been benefits that maybe they're not realizing as a consumer?
Yeah, look, I think whether they're a complainant or not, when there are complaints and bad behavior stops, it benefits them too. Right? If there are junk fees out there that I don't complain about because I don't know they're junk fees, if somebody else is recognizing it, and whether it could be our office referring it to the CFPB or other individuals who do see it, well, then I benefit because I'm not being charged those junk fees. I'm not being subjected to predatory student loan practices. If I happen to have student loans, I don't have to complain myself. Somebody else did it, but there's somebody there to act on it. Look, this only helps people who want to get away with cheating Americans. And the conflict of interest alone for Elon Musk is highly significant given his businesses. We get here in our office, hundreds of consumer complaints every month. And I know because of those complaints alone that this is an issue that Americans, Rhode Islanders, do care about. Look, I'm not going to give the president political advice. He's doing all right on his own in terms of turning off Americans, and I think that's only going to change. But why he thinks that taking actions that harm the vast majority of people in this country is good for him politically, and will lead him into what I think in his mind would be a third term, notwithstanding its unconstitutionality, is beyond me. But the reality is this, that state attorneys general, we fought for our consumers before Donald Trump took office. We're going to fight for them while he's in office, and we're going to fight for them after he's gone in 3 years, because there's no question that's going to happen in 3 years.
You mentioned potential conflicts of interest with Elon Musk. As a business owner in this country, with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau effectively not acting right now, in what ways could his companies benefit?
Well, because they won't be regulated by an agency that would prevent them from cheating Americans. Look, it's not, consumer protection isn't anti-business, although the administration and Mr. Musk would have you believe that. What it does is, and we talk about this all the time, again, long before Donald Trump came along and long after he's on the ash heap of history, the bottom line is that when companies cheat, they take advantage of companies that don't cheat, because the leaders of those companies recognize that cheating is both morally wrong, but it's bad for their own business. They want to do things the right way. When people cheat, they have a leg up on those legitimate businesses, and so consumer protection helps them as well. What consumer protection is about is an equal, fair playing field. It's not about helping one group of people over another. When the playing field is level, when consumers know what they're getting into, when they decide whether they'll get a benefit from the bargain, because they have all the information that's available to them, when something's not being hidden from them in small print or in forms that are 10 pages long, well, then they benefit. The reality is that these adhesion contracts, where it's everything is in the small print, a lot of what our consumer protection law is designed to do is to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into when you sign a contract. And these are exactly the kinds of consumer protections which this administration wants to take away. That's why there's no doubt in my mind that as everyday Americans realize what this administration is doing to them by eliminating this agency that protects them, by eliminating healthcare agencies or reducing them that protect them from real illnesses, by eliminating funding for the National Institutes of Health that are doing the kind of research that will allow them to live longer and better lives, that Americans will wake up and see what this president is doing when he is alienating our allies across the globe and standing with and for authoritarians. Americans know that that is inconsistent with our values, and eventually, as I said, Donald Trump will be discredited and ultimately gone.
And, right now, there are Republicans controlling the House, Republicans controlling the Senate, Republicans controlling the Oval Office. What, for the Americans who want to see the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau stand, is there anything that can be done? What are you doing with your team of attorneys general across the country?
Well, look, we're going to fight in the courtrooms to the extent we can, but eventually, I think of it as somebody, described the NFL, not for long. I don't think that that scenario that we have right now with the two branches of government in Republican hands is going to last past the midterms. I mean, there's going to be pushback from Americans. There are farmers in Kansas that can't sell their soy to American companies that are sending food aid overseas to help feed malnourished and starving children in sub-Saharan Africa. Well, even if those Kansas farmers don't give a damn about those starving children, they care about selling their soybeans. I suspect they care about those starving children too. But when those Americans begin to talk to their representatives in Congress in red states, there's going to be pushback. Look, the president is sidelining the entire Congress. I don't know why you'd want to be in Congress as a U.S. senator, as a congressman from a red state, when the president is effectively ignoring you. It's his way or the highway. What's the point? Well, the point is our founders created these three branches of government to have competing pressures so that Americans are safe from an authoritarian government. The president wants to push us in that direction. We as attorneys general are pushing back.
What do you say to Rhode Islanders who are watching what's happening right now and are scared by all the cuts they're seeing?
Well, they should be scared. I mean, the president's conduct will affect them in real ways. If Medicaid dollars go away, whether you're on Medicaid or not, that's going to impact our healthcare system in a way that may well cause it to collapse. Here's why. Hospitals and doctors have to treat ill patients. You can't go into an emergency room and not have insurance and not get treated. They're going to treat you. But now the hospitals and doctors and providers aren't going to be compensated. An already crumbling system is going to collapse. And when that system collapses, Americans are going to pay the price. I was in Kent County Hospital yesterday, meeting with terrific doctors, nurses, and other providers. We're already in a bad state. The notion that we could survive losing that amount of federal funding, whether it's here or in a red state, simply because the president wants to give tax cuts to his millionaire and billionaire friends, Americans are going to see that. We don't think about our healthcare system until we have to walk into it with a family member or ourselves. And then when you're sitting in the waiting room for 18 hours because we don't have the staff to allow the hospitals that have existing beds but can't staff them. Well, that means that at Kent County Hospital on any given day, 10 to 15 people are in the ER just being boarded, waiting for a bed because they can't staff the beds upstairs. That's a problem. It's 50 in the Brown Health system. 50 people a day are waiting in waiting rooms, need to be admitted to the hospital, but there are no beds for them. It's going to get worse if the president's cuts go through. And that's when Americans are really going to have to stand up and say, this is not the bargain that we asked for when we elected this president.
And back to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau now, because right now it's operating as a shell of itself. The website isn't even working right now. Do you see it surviving this administration's cuts?
No, but I think it will eventually come back. It's, how do I put this? I always I don't want to lose in what I say the reality of the impact on everyday people. But one thing I know is this. Americans, politically with a small p, want their leaders to do consumer protection. When I'm just out in public, I was at the burial of an Armenian-American soldier who was lost in World War II. His remains were recovered and buried in the North Burial Ground. Really solemn moment. At the end, a woman came over to me and thanked our team for helping her get in consumer justice with respect to her refrigerator. That kind of thing happens to me all the time. Why? Because people don't know what to do when they're getting ripped off as consumers. You see it in your own reporting. They're powerless. They can't afford to hire a lawyer for $5,000 to fix an $800 refrigerator. Americans care about consumer protections. The Consumer Protection Financial Bureau has returned, as I said earlier, $21 billion to 195 million Americans. Absent those recoveries, they would be in a much worse place. They're going to feel that pain over the next 3.5+ years, and that's going to rebound against the Republican Party and this president in a really harsh way.